Welcome back to another episode of the continuing saga of Bondo Betty, our 1966 Desert Style Karmann Ghia. When we left off last, we had installed a fuel tank and a fuel gauge into this car, and I thought I'd show you what that looks like. Looks pretty decent. The black gauge against all that chrome isn't 100% perfect, but it's fitting with, you know, all the interior taken out of the car, the switch panel. It works just fine. We've also been working on the bushings and the axle seal kit, which we have replaced. I had broken a bolt and I can't get it out, so you can see I'm missing one, and I am going to tack weld that plate onto the bolt that is there. Another thing I've done, I don't know if you can see this very well, but the spring plate is slotted, and so we have, when we put this back together, put the axle tube as far back as possible so that I can put some toe out instead of the lot of toe in an effort to make this more stable. We will replace the flexible brake hose, which I don't know, it's in there somewhere. Got to test the emergency brake, make sure I hooked it back up right and it's working. So we got a few little things, odds and ends that we're doing here. But the next step for what we're doing is I'm going to drill and tap these 12mm bolt holes for these wheel bolts, for a 14mm wheel bolt. You see I've got a couple of them cut off. You can see I've got the long ones here. That's the Napa part number. But the reason I need to do that is some of these bolt holes are stripped out at the 12mm, and so I'm trying to correct that. Of course, I don't have any way other than a grinder to cut a hardened bolt. So what I've done is taken a pair of vice grips, clamped the bolt in that, and then clamped it to the sawhorse. And I'm just spraying the sparks out here in my fairly dead grass. You can probably hear the wind. We're in a transition day. We've had a few days of spring, and it's 62 degrees today, and by tonight at midnight when I go to work for the night shift on the railroad, it will be like 30 degrees. So temperature is going to be dropping here, starting really, I think it already is dropping. But yeah, we're taking advantage of the good weather and making progress on Bondo Betty. We have gotten everything put back together. I tack welded where that bolt was that I couldn't get out. Changed the axle seals. You might have noticed a moment ago that I had forgotten to put the mount for the snubber back on, so I had to take a bolt out and reposition that. We've got the drums all tapped, new threads. Got the axle seals done. And on both sides, the driver's side and passenger side. One thing that I'm not certain of is whether or not the axle seals are still leaking. If you look at the bottom of that drum, looks like there might be a little bit of fluid in there. Part of what I think is going on is that, of course, without having this off of the jack stands, I can't tighten it all the way up. You got to put the wheels on and put the car back on the ground. And so it might be leaking, it might not, might have to redo it, not certain. Ultimately, this whole process has been a couple of weeks because of job cuts at work. I've gotten bumped down to a job that I've had to work basically every day, instead of getting a couple of days a week off. And so that's kind of been difficult to find time to work on this stuff. The project I'm working on right this minute is I'm changing the oil. We're going to lash the valves here in a little bit. I don't know if you can see this. Let me hang on one second. So one thing I tried to do is get this bypass plug out, oil bypass plug out, and I was unsuccessful in doing that. I have two reasons for wanting to change the oil bypass plug. One, I got this temperature sensor right here that would fit that bypass plug oil gallery, and the empty springs to increase the oil pressure. Currently, there's this oil pressure sending unit off of a T here that sends to the gauge in the front of the car, along with the speedometer speedometer blinky light. Here's a look at the gauges inside the car, and basically I just question the accuracy of both of these gauges, the oil pressure and the temperature sending unit. One, when the oil pressure drops to damn near zero, the blinky light that's in the speedometer doesn't come on. It doesn't, I mean, watch this. So as you can see, they work, but in the charging light, when the voltage is down, that light does come on. When I shut the car off but leave the ignition on, the oil pressure light will come on, just like when you first test it. So I just question whether or not these gauges are accurate. The other thing going on is, if you look here, we've got the big oil cooler that's up inside this oil fan air scoop. You know, you can see in there, I don't know how well that'll show up, but the temperature sender that's in the car is right there, and it's in either the oil coming out or going in. I don't honestly know which. There's another oil cooler back there that you can't see unless I get a light on it. Basically, this thing was made to use in the desert, and I don't really, I'm trying to figure it all out. We will be changing this. I've had a lot of people comment on the fuel filter, so we'll change that here in a bit. Ultimately, the goal is to get a temperature sender into the bottom of the engine so that this 300-degree gauge will work. What I want to do, and if you look here, we'll take a look at this sending unit here, which I ordered both of these parts from J-Bugs. Here's the oil drain plug that I took out of the car, and as you can see, this distance is significantly longer. According to J-Bugs, this sending unit does not work with a Type 1 Volkswagen. And if you look here, what will happen is if I try to put this in, it'll go like that. It'll hit right on that rivet, and it is going to push that out, okay? Ultimately, which will make this strainer not fit. So what I want to do is take and drill a hole in this in order to make it so that the sending unit goes up into this tube that fits around the pickup tube. Now, what'll probably happen is it'll suck more dirt off of the bottom of the oil pan, or oil case, sump case, I guess. But as you can see, there's a CB Performance remote oil filter cover with an oil filter on there. So I'm not super worried about keeping the oil clean. Here is the screen I took off. As you see, it is actually really clean for having put a couple thousand miles on it. I'm going to clean all this off and we'll see how this goes. So what I've done is I have cut the rivet that holds the two pieces together out. Then I drilled a 1/2-inch hole in both the strainer and the pickup tube flange. I don't know what you would call that. And that fits in like that. Okay. We're going to set this on here so that you can see that it'll fit here. And hang on one second. Well, I paused for a second because I was going to try to put that drain plug in here. But what I just realized is that the threads on that are different than that. But the threads on this plug are the same as the lug bolts. And so what I'm going to try to do, probably just screw things up, is try to tap it with the same tap that I use to tap the drums. Got a pretty good feeling I'm going to screw this up and then be scrambling to get a new sump cover. If it's not one thing, it's another. All right, we have success. What I've done is I've used this 14 by 1.5 millimeter tap that I used to tap all the drums with so that I can put these shortened lug bolts in. And I have tapped the sump cover. Now this is sticking up a little bit extra because you can see I don't have the copper washer in there yet, but I'd rather have it a little high. And what we've got here is we have the strainer and that oil piece, the oil sump cover. And so we'll stick that in there like that, kind of line up these holes. And what you'll see is it sticks in there just fine. There is a gap around the sensor. And so it will ultimately, most of the oil will come through the strainer, I believe, but some of it will come through those holes right there. Again, I have a remote oil filter, so I'm not super worried about it. I think what we might end up doing is J-Bugs has a mini oil sump that has a different style filter. We might end up ordering that and trying to do the same thing, tap it for this and see what happens. But for now, what we're going to do is just get this mounted in there. We'll get the gauge ran and just kind of see what happens from here. Okay, we're getting this all buttoned up. We have checked the valve lash over here and over here. Put a new oil filter on. Remarkably, the Napa one that cross-references to the Fram wouldn't screw on, so I went and got this CarQuest oil filter here. Looks like that is trying to leak a little bit. We've got fresh oil in there. I'll give it another little squeeze. But yeah, so we got this buttoned up. Of course, if it isn't one thing, it's another. When I went to take the fuel line off of here, what ended up happening is I pulled the barb out of the fuel pump. So I am going to use some of this leftover JB Weld tank weld and put it on the barb and try to get everything to seal back together. It's not one thing, it's another. So I mixed some of the JB tank weld into this little ball, and then I've put it around there, and hopefully that will hold. I mean, there's not a ton of pressure here, so we'll find out. Got the fuel hose on. Hopefully that barb will stay in with that little bit of JB Weld. Really don't want to have to put a new fuel pump in this. But we'll do whatever we gotta do, you know. It's no big deal. Been putting oil in. I'm using this Driven GP1 15x40 as oil. It was recommended by a couple of different people. My Jack up at Bug Stuff. I saw this on one of the YouTube channels, so this is what I've been using. It's green. It makes a mess, but it works. Okay, I've got Bondo Betty back on the ground so that I can tighten up the axle nuts. And what I've done is I've used this breaker bar right here. I've used this shovel, if I can do this one-handed here. Use the shovel to get some extra leverage on here, and then tightened it basically as tight as I could get it. On the driver's side, the hole for the cotter key came out pretty easily. On this one, I had to back it off just a hair. I don't know if you can see that hole in there with me shining the light. But now we're going to put her back on jack stands and get some gear oil in here. Okay, now that I have the axle nuts torqued in place with a cotter key, the next step is to add some gear oil to the transaxle. What I've done is rigged up this farm jack with this funnel, and we have the hose going into the bung opening in the transaxle. It is a 17 millimeter Allen key to undo that bung. If you've been following along, you'll see that last year we drained all the transaxle oil and put new gear oil in. So I'm just basically topping it off. I'm really hopeful that this brake drum does not leak. The axle seal, don't feel real confident about it, but we'll find out shortly. While I'm basically waiting for the oil to drain into here, I'm gonna go through, adjust all the brakes, and yeah, this may take a while. If you can see outside, it is winter wonderland once again here in Pennsylvania, but it's going to be nice by the end of the week, and I really want to drive this car. Okay, I've spent the last few hours this morning adjusting the brakes, tinkering with them. For whatever reason, the right side brakes were more out of adjustment than the left side, and I don't know, I tried to do them all the same, but you know, I'm new to this. But now we're gonna go get some gas and take her for a ride, and I'll give you a final report here in a moment. Well, I took her for a test drive and it did not go very well. The right front brake was sticking, although I think it unstuck. And now the engine wants to die. That does not sound good. That sounds really bad. So, don't know exactly what's going on, but I got her home barely. And yeah, we'll have to figure it out. If you've watched this far, thank you. Ta-ta for now, and I'll update you in another video once I figure all this out.